Hello, this is Roger Cabe with the Southwestern Medical Clinic, an organization specializing in medical excellence, Christian witness, and international mission involvement. Join us today as we listen to one of our providers, Dr. Lois Lello, as she shares with us about her recent trip to the Philippines.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to pause and to reflect on a group of people in your country, your world, that in some ways are put aside and set away, but you've given us an opportunity to meet them and to work with them. And we ask that you would continue to bless those peoples and protect them and develop in them a hungering and a love for you. Thank you for the food that has been graciously prepared by the Philippine ladies for us, and may it also transport us there and give us a chance to feel and understand the flavor of the Philippines, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So with that being said, it was Mrs. Toscano, nurse practitioner. It was Dr. Vitanco's mother, and it was another friend of mine who's at the university. Oh, sorry. Well, if I just come closer to this, that would work farther away. Okay. So the Palomano people group is a people group that lives up in these mountains. I passed a little card around. You think of the Philippines as islands. It's lots of islands. And this little island is off to the west side. It's a long island. It's actually one of the longer islands. Yeah, we'll get there. My coach. And that is the people group that we are going to. We had a group of missionaries there and have been for a number of years, but the key missionaries involved had just come home and had an extension to their time at home. And so we went there to help support their work and help the new, younger missionaries who were there for short-term reasons. So we're going to go through some pictures. We're going to show the trip to the Palawan. It's a long ways away. You start out every trip like that in an airplane. This was for Michelle, to try and help her get over the airplane. She's not here. We want her to get into an airplane and go far away. So when you do that, keep on going, you'll see many different scenes above. And this is actually the last airport we got to, Puerto Princesa Airport. This is on the Palawan Island. And so we landed here finally after 2.5 days. So you're traveling for a while before you get there, just to get there. So my husband's going to put a little presentation, and this presentation basically shows you how we got there. So we'll start out somewhere familiar. We'll go over to the continent. This is going to be a Berrien Springs moment. That is where I live. If you look carefully, you can come visit me. So that's my home. And then over here is my second home down here in a place called Southwestern Medical Clinic, right there. And so we were launching from these places. My husband was already there. He'd been there a week early to visit a different project in a different island where a young man is working with another indigenous group. And Ruth and I got on a plane and went by ourselves. Jonathan stayed home, and we flew to Detroit from South Bend. And then from Detroit, we flew out to Japan. And the whole time you're kind of moving beyond the sun. So time you really stretches, because this is 12 hours different. So you gain 12 hours going, and you lose 12 hours, right, coming back. So it's a time zone difference. So then we ended down here in the Philippines. There's the Philippines, all the islands. There's Manila where we came in. There's Palawan, Puerto Princesa Airport, and then we actually were in the southern part. So you can see that's quite a distance here. Once we got to the Philippines, we slept overnight, took another flight to get here, and then it took about 5 hours to travel that distance. How far would you say it was, Lawrence? 70 miles. 5 hours to do 70 miles. So that gives you a little interpretation of what the road looks like. So there's one road that travels down, no other roads on this side, there's one on the other side, and it travels down to a place called Brooks Point, which is an interesting town. It's got quite a few little resources. It has its first supermarket that was just installed. And then we went out to the trailhead ultimately, and then we hiked from the trailhead up into the mountains. And we'll have a few key points, and then during the presentation you'll see those places come by as we talk about them. So there's the villages as you pass in the kind of the midlands. This is considered lowlands, and then you have highlands. And so you have to walk up through the villages, through the mountainside, to the top of the mountain. The second village, there's a place called the Big Tree. If you get here, you kneel down and have a prayer of thanksgiving, because it's just really steep before the Big Tree. Then you have to travel up a riverbed. It's not a huge one. It's a stream with rocks and boulders and things, and the trail kind of weaves backwards and forwards. And you go up a riverbed, and then you reach the peak, which is called the halfway point. and then you walk along the ridge. Sorry, honey? There's the riverbed, yeah. You went back to it again. It's kind of hard to see, no river there, but we'll see the picture shortly. And then you go up literally into the clouds sometimes, and you go up to the halfway point, and then you're coming around the top of the mountain down to past this village, down to Kamantian, which is the place we were, and this is actually the home we stayed in. There's some other points on here that we've highlighted that are there too. There's a swinging bridge that we'll talk about in a story in the future, and then there's a place called Kansuli. You can see there's rivers that just cut down. This is the Tomlid, which is a major river that runs way back into the mountains. But everyone who goes into those mountains pretty much comes this direction. Right past our house, there's a little trail. And then they go down over the swing bridge or through the river. They're fording in different places. And then on into the mountains. Because we were 4 or 5 hours hike in, but there's people who are in further, 12 hours more. You know, so there's very, very remote locations. This is where they grew. They're proud to be there because they never came down. They never submitted to the Spanish Inquisition that happened there. No, it's not Inquisition, but they're conquered by the Spaniards. Sorry to say that. No, it's okay. So they are the Native Americans in the Philippines, basically. They're the Native Filipinos, and they live up in the mountains. So where are you going? Is it finished? Okay, so we finished with that. So when we landed in Puerto Princesa, we luckily had a vehicle. So we were using this vehicle with the missionaries. It was parked there because they had left, and they left it parked there. And there were other vehicles on there. There's what they call the tricycle. It has a motorcycle and a single cycle wheel, and then they transport everything. I could have done a whole series of pictures of what you find. Pigs, children, people, produce, like all sorts of things carried. I thought this was interesting. It was a drugstore where everything is purchased over the counter, basically. We don't really have prescriptive things there. And it said right underneath, Jesus heals. So they have a spiritual heart. There's been a strong Catholic influence, and there is still Protestant work that's being done as well. This is some samples of the roads. You're driving along, and then 2 minutes later, it's like this, and then it's like this, and then it's like this. There's buses with people piled on top of them. Of course, motorcycles with families traveling all together, you know, like 4 people on a motorcycle. We were very grateful for one of those. You've got your luggage department in the back of your motorcycle. And if you look carefully, you'll find some of the roads have rice over them. We'll go over that. This is the market where we went to shop because we had to carry in what we were going to eat. If it wasn't something that was growing up there, which we weren't too sure of what we'd see, we had to bring it in. And we had to bring in light because there's no electricity up there generally. There's lots of things that we use. We use the beef seasonings in our meals up there. And then there's rice and rice and rice. And, you know, you go to the store or you go to the market, and it's like you can have all the rice you can eat. So your restaurants and things in the lowlands. This is actually the site of Puerto Princesa. This is the point where we were waiting to go up, right outside the market. So that's what we were left with. We had brought 4 bags of materials over. Most of them were clinic-based. We took our defibrillator that was no longer needed. We took IV caps. We took medications. So we were probably about 6 of these for our clothing, maybe 5, clothing and food. And then the rest was supplies for the clinic. And this is the base home. I didn't get a good outside picture where the Georges worked from. So they always come back here, and they have someone there all the time. So someone in the lowlands, and then the team in the upperlands, they communicate and work with them. But this is the system they use. They bag it in plastic. They bag it in this fiber bag, and then they carry everything up on their backs. And we'll see some of that. This is the rice farm that they bought. They bought a farm because when these people come down, they really don't have a current up there, but they need help when they're down there, so they need money. So what they've done is create a farm where they can work and grow and be paid for labor so that if they come out of the mountains, they have a place where they can earn and pay for things that they need when they're down there. So that's what and actually right now we have a TB patient there because she came when I was there and she wasn't able to be treated because she'd lost contact so many times. They decided it wasn't worth going on and off so many times. So they made a commitment, she made a commitment to come and live on the farm and take her meds consistently. Now we can treat her because it was reversible, but she was suffering and wasn't getting better because she couldn't be treated up there. This is a major form of electricity up on the lowlands. It's just a wire posted up there, you know, trying to keep up. This is the farm itself. Keep going, Lois. This is the first day we went. This is the shelter that these 2 young men live on the farm. This is another shelter that is more of a traditional home, the thatched roof. This is the form of heating food. Most of them in the lowlands have a form of charcoal. The large shelter here, you'll see me another picture, is where they put their rice. And we were there during harvest time. So halfway through, a bunch of people hiked out of the mountain and went down there and harvested rice, which is labor intensive. We'll go over that. This is the shelter that they store it in because they have to harvest it, dry it, store it, husk it, dehusk it, and buy it. It's like the most intensive form of food that there is when it comes to labor intensive. This is the farmland, and some of the rice goes up. So this was our last meal in the lowlands, our last shower, our last meal. We had a warm shower. Was that one warm? Not too warm. That wasn't too warm. The last warm one was in Manila. And so we had a nice array of food, and we were kind of stoking up, getting ready to go up the hill. So here's the hike. The hike is steep. Initially, it was very hot, and you just kept going up and up. I don't know how long the first segment took. It took me a while because I was very tired. This is Carrie. She's the nurse who's there as the provider, the one who was most supportive to. But you can see the trail is narrow, and you go through different types of terrain as you're going up.
Just to give a bit of perspective, it's a 2-mile hike, and it took us 4 hours to get in.
Because of the steepness and the heat, my heart was just literally pounding out. I got to a certain point, Carrie just took my husband's T-shirt, soaked it in water at the river, just put it over because I was just, you'll see, being from heat. This is some of the mountain rice, and I have a container of mountain rice there that's on the counter. That's the rice that they're growing here. It's got a very unique flavor. We had poles to use. Lawrence used his for more than just walking, but I love my little bamboo pole. We brought them home so we could hike better. And this is at the big tree. There was a picture of the big tree. Once we'd gotten up to the big tree, you get to go to the river. And the river is cooler, and you're at not such a steep climb. And you can see the river path actually winds off in and out of the water as you're traveling up through the river section. And it's steep. It's kind of hard to make a picture of steep. Here's Ruth, and there's more steps going down. Just the rocks. The funny thing is you can't really know that until you're a Padawan where the steps are, but Lawrence did enough hiking that he could tell and watch them put their feet, and there's actually little carved out steps everywhere. You just have to open your eyes visually and understand, and you see, because these people wear no shoes. Go ahead, honey. Here's Lawrence at the, I'm at the top picture. I think that was about the time we got to the top, and this is me at the top. I had some less beautiful ones, so I put this one in. So we were hiking until we got to the ridge. Now this is up at the ridge, and you can see this is the mountain range. We're going that direction. This is the ocean and the lowlands that we've hiked from. We've hiked up the hill and around, and then you can look out and see this is the point, Brooks Point, that we came from. And then you're just hiking around the top of the ridge until you get to a point, and I think that's the next slide, where you start going down. And up here is one of the small villages, and then you come down a steep slope, which isn't too long, take maybe 10, 15 minutes, and you come into this place. It's called Spoon Village. The first missionaries that ever were there were Mr. and Mrs. Spoon. They actually work at Andrews Academy right now. He does. But they initiated care for these people right here in this group. And then as you can see, whoops, one more thing, honey, because I don't have this map again. You'll have to go up, down a ravine, up a ravine, and then over in the home we stayed, I actually had to go up and down 2 ravines to get to the clinic every time you go backwards and forwards. It was 300 steps. Not just steps, but steps to get there. Okay. This is actually the missionaries that are in the States. They're leaving this week, Sunday, to return. Can you just give a 1-minute brief?
So they've been working amongst this people group for they'll be 20 years next year, and they were delayed for for family reasons. And so our responsibility was to go and support the project. There's 8 short-term volunteers. There's about 11 people that work on the project, and organization wanted to have full-time employees kind of be there to catch
if there was problems.
If there was any problems.
Imagine that. So this is their family. They have a bio family, and then they actually have adopted 4, right? 4, some officially and some not officially, Padawans. Padawanos. They have 4 girls. The youngest is the one there. She's in her 20s. So this is our home away from home. This is the building that Kent George, I always get those mixed up, Kent George built. And one of his strengths is in building. So he's done a really amazing job. If you look on the other side, you'll see some solar panels. So there is some electricity for little fluorescent bulbs when there's light. So we had like almost straight rain the first 2 weeks. And then up at the clinic, he's actually put in a hydroelectric, what do they call it, plant. It's just a little thing that takes water that rushes down the hill and goes through this, and that's what supplies the clinic with the electricity they have. It's a more consistent supply than the solar, but they still don't have refrigeration consistently. So this is looking out from our porch. You see it goes down. It's quite clear. He's also cleared that because he has hopes one day of using it as an airstrip for a very small airplane. So this is the happenings. This is one of the local homes. This is the very common place where everyone takes their bath in the low area This is across our porch here. You can see this item we'll talk about in a moment right here. That's the water squeezer for when you wash your clothes, because right immediately below you'll see the slab. And on that slab we usually have a big basin, and someone, if not us, someone is washing their clothes. And then you run it through the wringer and you hang it up and you hope it doesn't rain. This is another one of our visitors. This one came every time of the day and night, and we had this meow, meow, meow going on and on and on. But the importance is they keep away the rodents. So when they didn't come, they were worried. So this is the cat that lived with us. And this is one of the dogs. Unfortunately, with the recent phone call we found, he just died. My daughter knows that he was the cutest puppy, and he gets woven into the story. His name is Kumba. Kumba. These are the buckets. Now these they carry on their head. I have a smaller bucket, but it might give you the idea. It's not the same, but the way they use that strap is they actually put it on the back of the bag on the back, and they put the strap over their head. Okay, and so they carry 70, 80, 100 pounds, sometimes more than their personal weight, in the back of these woven baskets, which would come down to here about. They're long. They're really long. They bring patients to the clinic. The TB patient came in one of these from the village where we went. That's over and beyond. They carried out an OB patient who was hypotensive in one of these. It's just unbelievable.
The people are just extraordinarily strong.
They are very strong.
One of the standing jokes is you'll have male short-term volunteers that will be carrying their suitcases up and really struggling, and a 14-year-old high school girl will pick his 35-pound bag and hike it up the mountain without.
Mostly, yeah, and barefoot. Barefoot. And mind you, everything is slippery because it's wet, it's muddy. We wore cleats. We use river shoes. We use all different kinds of things to get up there. But their cleats are their toes. Their toes just link in and give them traction when they're going up. So this is, I'm forgetting his name. No. Naphtali. Naphtali is a national who's worked in the project for a number of years. He was actually bagging up some materials to take out after one of the missionaries got hurt. This is our neighbor across from the porch. His name is Replik. He's a little monkey. He's on a chain, and he doesn't like people, except he got along well with Lawrence. So Lawrence actually got to the point where he could actually feed him out of his hand. So this is our pet monkey that we watched over. And then there's tons of chickens. I didn't get hardly enough pictures of chickens, but they're all over the place talking and speaking as soon as they wake up at 5. And then we had a parrot on our porch, too, and Ruth really enjoyed the animals. This is the main connection with home. We take our cell phones, we put a rubber band around them and hang them up and then put in a cord. And if the weather's right, we can get a phone signal. And Lawrence actually got a little bit of 3G in that, so he could do a little bit of emailing on his phone. Do you have a question? No? Okay. Inside the house, you can see what they really, really think they need. They have a very nice kitchen, a gas stove, water that runs. All the running water is just spring water that is funneled through pipes and then comes to your faucet. But you don't drink that because it has potential contamination. We'll go into that. They love books. They have a library there that they use quite extensively and loan out to the people that are there. And then Lawrence was working on his computer because he had to still keep his job up. So this is why I went. I went to be in the clinic. Right? I'm the doctor. I'm going to go help in the clinic. When I got there, everything turned around. It was like, whoa, this is different. Now, I knew it would be different at the non-mission trips, but this was really different. It threw me for a loop. I had a day where I just had to take time out because I was so trauma. It was trauma. Because when you go to the clinic, you, of course, have a different language. I said, we have a translator. No, but the only translator is the provider who is there taking care of everyone. Well, okay. Well, then I'll be able to help with some of the diseases. Well, no, these diseases are things I never see here. So we go to the manual, and we look at the manual and find out what symptoms are and everything. So basically, I became a mentor, and I worked with the provider who was there, and we would take time every time we could, and we would talk over this process, that process. How do you do this? What can I help you here? How can I teach you here? How can I help? Because she's basically a 2-year nurse who's been there 2 years now, and she runs the show. That's her job, and she's there sometimes by herself. Around the clock doing the IVs because they do have an inpatient bed or two, taking care of all the patients, handling the trauma, hiking them out. So this is Carrie. She was the one who hiked in with us. And this is our clinic. They have about 3,000, 4,000 charts, I think. They have this section here, which are in the past 2 months have come, so there's a smaller set. They've got their measuring. This room here is a pharmacy. They have to compound their own medications for the children. So they crush all their pills and make their own liquids, which are terribly bitter. This is where Ruth did her phone school in the morning. In their procedure room, that's where the second day I was there, Carrie was reading a book, and I said, what are you doing? She said, I have to pull a tooth. I haven't done it. And I watched her extract that big, wicked granny tooth, and she had to take it. It had been days, and the lady wasn't improving, and so we had the tooth extraction here. And then down this corridor is the back porch. That's another picture of the examining room that Carrie was in. This and another room here are both the inpatient rooms. So we can go forward. That's one of our inpatient gentlemen. He had pneumonia, and maybe, I think he may have TB, but this is one of the older patients, and this is the room. They're very basic. They have a bed on one side and a bed on the other side for the family member who will have to stay and cook. At the back porch, you have our sterilization center. So this is where we sterilize everything. So it's washed in soap and water, and then in this area, there's a little tiny gas burner, and everything else is sterilized in there, including the suture packs with a pressure cooker. We actually had to replace that because it was like charring the covers when wasn't sealing properly. So they wrap up everything, they put it in, they pressurize it, and then one of the tours in the morning, because there's a long list of what you have to do, is to boil water. And so they boil water and they bring it back for medications and things that they need it for. And so there's constantly water being boiled back here and brought to the front for that. They mix their own bleach. They make their own eye salves. They make their own ointments. I mean, there's just a lot of very simple things that I would never have known. I never knew how to count the drips of an IV to know what rate it was. But I mean, to get the counts right and the drips right and to figure out all that, that's all has to be done there. So looking away from the porch, this is what you see. Trails and trails, little trails going different directions. If you look to the next one, right, as you come back on, the front porch is used for many things. I mean, the kids come and sit there. The patients wait there. Carrie uses it as her main point of reference when she uses her phone because that does get a signal. She just hangs it out there and it waits till it beeps or someone texts her from the lowlands. And it's also the site where the patients or inpatients sit usually because they just go out and sit on the porch. So there's the porch. It's also the location of the laundry service, which comes to the hospital and the clinic, and she does all the laundry every day and hangs it out to dry. These are what they try to do rice on, but it didn't work. And then you see the kids coming too. They play in it, they wash, they work. They're actually doing their own clothes. These two young ladies are high school students. They're much older than you'd expect. Many are in their up to 20s. And they're basically the screening and the MA of the clinic. Okay, so they know the language, they take the symptoms down, they write it in the documentation, they know how to do vitals, they have a rural health elective that they do, and part of their high school education is to be in the clinic, or to be in the younger grade school teaching, because what they can look forward to hopefully is to help. And the one young lady is actually this one over here. Oh, she was the one on the right, is wanting to be a nurse. She's come around to it a couple times, and she's now really wanting to be a nurse, this young lady here. So we're hoping she does. Here's Carrie Ann giving out the medication. So every time you give a medicine, you take the medicine and you put it in a long, narrow bag, and you tie off every single day worth of medication, or dose sometimes. And so you have little knots going all the way up that bag, and then this little visual and written form tells them what to do. And so you go out there and you tell them to take this one, and take this one, and take this one, and you go backwards and forwards until you've heard that they've actually connected with what you want them to do, and then you dispense the medication to their home. This is their protocol procedure book, which is very thick, and it goes through all those diseases that are common and gives them, and they've been working on this for years, but the latest edition was 2014, so they're working hard. A lot of the material that we read when you travel to international places is woven into that. This is one of our patients, 2 years old. He had no stool for a week. He had a fever of 104. He was lethargic. He was just lying there and crying at times, just very, very, very whiny. So what would we say he has? You know, in our system, it's one thing when we get there, it's an enteric fever. He probably has maybe amoebic, or his gut was tense. His bowels were full, but not traveling through. So he got hydrotherapy as part of his routine. So the next picture shows you where. So that's where he gets his hydrotherapy. This is actually the bathroom for the female missionaries. So this is your outhouse, and I was going to show you, they send the kids if they have a high fever, they bathe them down there or take them down and have them bathe, because the water comes right out of the ground, so it's cool. And that's the only water. This is the latch. You can see it's just a little thing that holds it shut. This is where we took our showers. when I was up there, and it just drains down into a hole, and on the other side, you'll have an open section. You'll have your toilet, which is a squat toilet, and then you'll have a bucket below. And so you basically squat over the toilet, do what you got to do, then you get your bucket and you flush your own toilet that way. And it's pretty clean and hygienic. They have a nice solid slab. It's nice and open, so you kind of take your shower in the wild. These are some of the checklists. The reason I brought this up, there's a malnutrition checklist. That's one of the main things we were talking about initially, is working with malnourished babies and children, and how do we supplement the mom and the babies. They have their protocol, which I think works, but we weren't getting some improvements. In one case, we actually doubled the supplement, and the child actually started gaining. So I think it's a quantity and caloric need that they're just not getting it, because they're constantly bombarded with malaria. This is one of the little ones who came for the nutrition checkup. 2 months old, poor weight gain, delivered at 34 weeks in Consuli, which is that little town on the other side of the mountain, who was carried out of a month with neonatal sepsis. And the baby is doing really, really well. Here's the picture, just so you can see the little immature face, you know. But Carrie wasn't sure how old this baby was exactly when she delivered, so I said, well, let's sit down, let's look at the way to stage a child and find out how old they are. And so we went through the resources she had, and so now if she sees a newborn, she can actually go through that and say, now I know how to tell, you know, how preterm this kid is. Foods come to your door. This is some long gourds that look like cucumbers. This is actually Bubit, who's the elementary teacher, and she was bartering for us. This is another form of a wild food, or they also grow it. Tapioca leaves, kumba. Yeah, kumba is the name. It's actually poisonous if eaten direct, but if you cook it and drain it and cook it and mash it, it becomes edible. So that's what we had. This is, do you guys know what this is? Isn't that beautiful? That's the flower of banana tree. Isn't that cool? These are little tiny baby bananas. This is about this big. And they actually use this to make delicious food. They take off some of the outer coverage, chop it up really well, grind it. We had some patties, like little meatless patties that were just so delicious. But bananas come by the stalk. And this basket down here was 39 cents for that whole basket of bananas. But you know what? You have to wait a week and a half to eat any of them, because you can't get a ripe banana when you want it. You got to just buy your bananas and wait for them to ripen up for you. So you're never really sure. This is the marketplace. I just put a few pictures together. Every Sunday it comes alive. And in that market there's dried fish, which is a major form of protein for them. There's salty, salty little fish. This is one of the missionaries meeting and greeting some of the families there. And then they do have some miscellaneous sweets and candies that come up, and this was actually some bananas I grabbed when I saw they were yellow, because I wanted a banana so bad. Didn't have much fruit that wasn't canned. So these are other foods that we had. We'd hike in the tomatoes, usually green. This is a squash. We'd bring in the potatoes and the garlic, and then these beans were growing up there, and there's another bean that actually has like a winged shape to its little fins, and that was some of our main staples for food. Back to the market. Go ahead. And this is the modern kitchen, okay? When we landed there, Carrie made us a beautiful meal in this kitchen. So what do they have? They have a running water that comes off the spring. They have a sink that drains off into the woods. They have a tank here where that water is placed and filtered in a ketidine. And then over here, you have a cook stove. And then they actually have a table surface they can work on. So here's the filtered water, and that's the pantry, if the cats don't get into it. This is the traditional kitchen. So this is basically a little platform of bamboo that's been cut and slitted and opened. And this family, this lady actually is the wife of the man who was in the hospital, is taking some of those leaves, those very same leaves, and she cooks them, and then she washes them until all the poisonous substance is gone. And then she actually added some coconut milk. This is our rendition of it, but this is the same series of kumba that you cook. This is the other half of kumba. Kumba has leaves and kumba has roots. And the kumba roots are used as kind of like a potato. It's a starch. And so you can do all sorts of things. They come like this, and you have to use your tukao and cut the outer rind and cut it off, and then you get your root out, wash it, and then boil it. The other nutrient food main source is rice. This is the mountain rice that's in that pot there. They will harvest it, put it out on tarps or cement slabs, and then they will bag it, and then over time, they will actually take the husk off, and we have a movie here of how they do that. So let's start with this one. He's pounding it in this sculptured piece of wood, which is a hollow tree trunk. Can you click that one, Lois? What it'll do for us? And they actually get into rhythms with a couple of people doing it at one time. Is it going to go? Okay. It's kind of fun to watch, but they're pounding backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. I think the more interesting one is this one, because then they take their basket, something like this, And they basically, it's a little flatter, and then they shake it. And they shake in such a way that they can blow the chaff off, and it has this swoosh, swoosh, swoosh sound. It's really amazing. And of course the chickens come running because they're going to pick up anything that lands on the ground. But that's how they take the stuff off, and then they take their, oops, sorry. Sorry, Lois. Then they take the rice and they store it for the next year. You can see the orchids just growing in their little house compound. Go ahead, Lois. Let's try to do the movie. Church. We attended church pretty soon after we got up there. Church is the school. And if you look carefully, you can see their alphabet. They have a different alphabet in the sense that there are different letters to their language. They just, while we were there, received their first Bible in their language. They had a language of the lowlands, but they got their first translation for theirs. There's a men's study group at church, which Lawrence led out. There was children's classes. I don't think that one's going to work for us either. Oh, it is. You don't have audio on it. Are you plugged into anything for the audio? No. Oh, okay. So these are the children, and they're singing, and it's just a little grow, grow, grow kind of song, but it's hard to actually hear it. We can maybe play it at another time, but it was precious because you can actually hear the singing of the kids. So that's the little group of kids that would gather every service. In the women's Bible study, there's quite a few women. There, if you look at this and you kind of watch the circle, there's Carrie again. Very colorful. The clothing is, like I say, they wear these malangs or tajongs to cover, and they usually have coverings underneath. This is on the men's side. You always are segregated, and this is tribal in their culture. The men are one place, the women the other. They don't even know who's married sometimes because they don't even come together. You know, you might see the child running backwards and forwards. Parents don't even know when their children are born because they don't have a registry up there. They don't know how old they are. They don't always sometimes know the name of their child in the clinic. It's just very, very primitively kind of sequestered up there in some of the ways. This little guy was precious. He's one of the children, a child of one of the children of the Georges, and he loved Carrie's violin. He just, every time she would play, he'd run up there and he'd sit down there and he'd just watch her. It was just so adorable. And every time she sang, they just asked, or played, they asked for more. You can see the slats, and as we sang, the dogs would howl through the slats. They would join us in our songs. And then this is me and one of the young ladies. They're very tactile. They would come and they would hug or hold you very frequently, which is fine. Homeschool. In the lowlands, this is what Ruth's room looked like when she studied. She went and took a month of high school up in the mountains, basically with her things. So in the mountains, she would put her things together. This was one of her little, what do you call it? Mascots. She had biology, so she was learning mitosis up there. But at the same time, she was budding new friendships. These are two Filipino girls. Her Spanish class was right next to the well because the young lady who was one of the missionaries up there was Hispanic, and so she actually tutored her in her Spanish. And then this is the creative design class. This is what I'm wearing here, but as you can see, there's so many ways to use the same piece of fabric. You can use it on your side. You can use it to carry your baby. You can tie it at the top. You can use it as a skirt. You can drape it over your shoulder. And Ruth went haywire. She just loved being able to use these in different ways. When you're sitting and everyone sits a lot, you can cover yourself to be modest. So that's her creative design class. Those are high school students from the high school. And she was recruited as an art teacher. So in the elementary school, she got to teach twice a week as an art teacher, which she just loved. She thrived on that. So that is the high school. It has 3 rooms in it. It doubles as a classroom during church time. And then the one over here is the grade school, which they're needing to expand. Below that, there is another house, which is actually the place where the food is prepared for the children, because they provide breakfast and lunch for the kids, and they don't provide it, the kids prepare it. So they actually have kitchen duties and responsibilities. They actually cycle the children that are younger during the morning and the high school during the afternoon for classes, and then on the alternative time, they actually have responsibilities, work responsibilities to help support them. The younger children go home, the high school students stay there and stay there. Oh, one other thing on that. I wanted to show you the bell. There's an old garçon, which is a gas can, and you know when you hear that gonging, you know that something's happening, and you go to school. And this area here is a very open area below the schools where they line up with every recess, and the trees are just huge. This is a little boy, he's probably about this tall, standing next to the tree with all sorts of ferns. It was very beautiful. So these are her high school friends looking inside the high school. Go ahead. There's some guys too. I didn't get those. And this is what a printer looks like when it has no electricity.
And the only thing you can do is a generator, and then the generator doesn't work because the gas can is broken. So what do? You IV hydrate with gas. So we hooked up an IV bottle, or bottles, and we put it down here, and we drip fed the generator with gasoline that had been carried up the mountain, and we got it going enough that we had electricity to print the little math sheets that they needed for the grade school. So that's what we did for our printing. Elementary school. This is Bubet and her husband. This is another child. They just got married last spring, and she's grown up in the mountain, and she's committed to being there. She's a wonderful person, and she runs the grade school. We have a short-term missionary running the high school at this point. This is the inside of the building. There she is up front. Lawrence gave a week of prayer. Every morning he'd come and tell a biblical story, trying to go through all the interesting stories chronologically, and they loved it. The back of the room has this drape, and when it's church, they pull it across, and that means it's church. When they push it back, it's school time. So they have other books and cubbies back there. And here's Ruth and her teaching, some of her things. Some of her art that she did with the kids. This is the group, and they did origami, and they did how do you tell the different places to do the face. This is one of Ruth's pictures. Then they did colors. Just simple things. And at the end, she made a test, and they had to do a test. And so she was very proud of her time there. Okay, so we've gotten to the stories. This story is not a story of them, but it is a story of them, of the Palawano. This is called Elias' story, and it starts out on the hillside right in front of our house. Saturday morning, we're heading off to church, and we're hiking down this hill, and we had been told that all the church was going to Kamantian on the other side of the river. But we got out there, and there's like a handful of 6 or 8 missionaries, no one else. And we're feeling a little discouraged, not sure what to do, and they said, well, we'll just go. They're expecting us up there. There's a missionary that stays there and is so faithful, we'll go join him. So we start hiking. You go down that way, down the runway to the point where it actually drops off. This is about 3/4 of a mile from the house. And then it drops off, and you end up looking out. This is just before you go. And this is where we're heading, this little village way up here on the other side of the ravine, the river. And you end up traveling through a lot of jungle-like material. I think the next slide is jungle. Yep. So it's narrow little paths going over little streamlets, and you get finally down to the bottom, and you see this, which was built by some missionaries 2-3 years ago. Before that, they had a rope, and they walked through the river. Okay. This river is the Tamlan, and it was in flood stage. In fact, the day before, the girls had been through it. It was only like 2 feet below. So this thing is just churning its way through the mountain, on its way down to the ocean. And so we had the spring bridge to go over. Well, the problem was when we got there. The good thing was, as we got there, the church started passing us. All the people started passing us. So I guess they figured the missionaries would take a long time to get to there. So they had time to sleep in. So they actually started calling past. And there's a lot of the church, some of the church members on the other side, they're all watching something. So what are they watching? And this is what they're watching. They're watching Elias. Elias was one of our missionaries. He's a recently graduated physician from Morelos, Mexico. He'd had 1 year of service within the country, and he has a heart for missions and wants to do mission work. He had chosen to sign up and had been there 2 weeks, maybe 3 by the time this happened. We got there. He had a smile on his face, but he was obviously in pain. And the story we had is he was walking down the bridge. He was scooping up that little puppy that was on the step that no longer lives, and he was in cleats. And so when he went across that bridge, one foot slipped forward and the other one caught, and it went... And he actually broke right across both his fib, and his calcaneus, or heel bone, was fractured in many ways. Now, we didn't know that. I just know it takes me 15, 20, 30 minutes to get down there, and it took them 3 hours to hike him to the clinic. And let's continue the story. We didn't know what was going to happen, so we went on. We left some people with him. The only way they can get him up, because he's 240 pounds, is to go down on all fours, put him on their back, and actually the gentleman who was holding his foot went up like a water buffalo, slowly up the trail, and put him on his back and helped him with other people holding him. So we went on up to church. This is the little place, Kamantian, Kansuli. Everything's built on stilts. So there's space, and it's all on a hill. So everything has to have leveling. Beautiful flowers. This is the church. Can't see, there was all sorts of chickens under here. This is the children's program. They got so full that the benches started breaking. They're just bamboo slats. And every so now you hear, and slowly, like 3 of the sides fell in, and they got an extra log. And the little boys, just about this tall, ran off in the next picture. They asked them to go to the cookhouse, and they came back carrying this long trunk of a tree. And that became the next bench when they put it behind there. This is kind of cute because you can see they watch from all different angles. The kids up in the trees and everything. having their little church service there. And then we had church. Lawrence preached, and they had a wonderful service. This is actually, one more, back one. This is a schoolhouse. This gentleman, first name, Sunday Valerica, has been there for how many years, Lawrence? 16 years. He's been up on this little tiny village. And he actually has 0 to 3rd grade and has like 50 or 60 students. And that's what one teacher. And this is actually his schoolhouse, which has a low section and then has an elevated section around it. And this was the gathering of people that got together. It was partly ours, partly theirs, and we just all come. And he was so overwhelmed, he wanted to take pictures. He was just so happy to see such a large gathering of people worshiping God together, and that was just a blessing for us too. We're in the back. So this is how we arrived back. It started raining on the way back. I was muddy from here to here. I wore the same skirt today, and it was really muddy. It was all the way up to here, because on the way back it was slipping and sliding, and Lawrence was doing a lot of hand-holding. And we came from that side down and then back up the other side. But when we got there, Carrie met us running down the airstrip. She says, we've got to get him out of here. Elias has to get out of here. We know he's broken. He's worried his foot is in, his leg has compartment syndrome because it was swollen so tense. He asked me to open it. I've never done it. He still had some good perfusion to his toes. So we got up to the clinic, and they were creating a new stretcher for him. So they put 2 long bamboo strips. You can barely get your neck in, okay? So it doesn't come out this way. It only comes out this way, okay? So if you fall a trip, your head goes like that, you know? And then they put extra struts across it. They put a big hammock or a hammock under it. They put more of these clothes underneath to try and support him because he was very heavy. And they put him in there, and they were trying to position his foot so it wouldn't hurt. And it took us a long time to try and find a position of comfort for him. We had prayer with him. He had some ibuprofen on board. I gave him some codeine. These are some of the men waiting to carry him down. So he's going to go down the trek that took me, I know, they're very young. The trek that took me 4 hours, he's going to go down that path in the dark with barefoot carriers to try and get out of the mountain so that he can actually get an x-ray and figure out what's going on, okay? And he knows what's going on because he's a physician, right? So you kind of got this gut feeling of it. So what they did was, I don't know if I have another picture. Do you have another picture? Okay. They took him to this hospital. It's a general hospital. Hospitals there basically are buildings with staff. There's no supplies. So as soon as you land, they look at you, figure out what you need, give you a list, and then you've got to go pharmacy to go get everything, your IV, your medications, you know, everything has to be brought to the hospital, and then they can take care of you. Well, we found out over a day or two that there was no physician here who could help him, no orthopedist. We did get an x-ray. He read the x-ray before the doctor. Uh-oh, he says. So we ended up having to take him up to Puerto Princesa, which was that 5-hour drive. Did you have a comment?
I was going to say, it took them 7.5 hours to carry him out. And a tremendous feat. You can think of, it was 18 men working together, and they're going down a 45-degree angle, handing him down. The fact that no one got mortally wounded in the process.
Yeah. I mean, they would be slipping, because some of the trails are so narrow that it just goes down. They'd slip up and roll down. And they were laughing. They were such positive spirits. It's unbelievable. There was a group that was to meet them at the bottom of the mountain, and they got there, and it was kind of earlier. They said, I don't know if they're, but we should go help them. So they started going up the mountain. Okay. There's a lot to say. That's a good story. They found a person lying sprawled across. He was drunk and totally still. And so they almost tripped over him. And coming down the mountain, they came to a place, they ate some sugar cane. They said, oh, we should have asked. So they stopped at the door and knocked. And the person inside thought they were rabble-rousers. And they got ready to come out with their knives to fight them this time. And they ended up joining them and helping carrying him down. So it was just quite a story. So this is the first hospital. Then we have a picture of him on an official stretcher after he got out. And then he was transported to a second hospital. And then after that, the decision was made because we had more support to fly him home. He lives in Mexico. He needs rehab for over 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. We don't know. So there he is getting ready to travel back. That took Lawrence out of the mountain twice. So Lawrence hiked in, hiked out twice, and then hiked out again. So he had 3 cycles of in and out of the mountain on the course.
Good exercise.
This is a special meal we had this Friday after he was hiked out. He was hiked out on a Saturday night. And what we chose to do is to celebrate what the community had done. So it's hard to see, it was in the school, it was on the ground, we had banana leaves, we had a long pole, we had candles, and if you follow the next one, I think you can see a few more. And again, honey, they had brochures, they had noodles, they had bread, they had drinks, which they never have out there. We had this all hiked in, and we had a feast with as many of the people who had taken him and their families as possible. So that's what this was all about. I think there's another one. Oh, this talks about some of the differences in the trail. It was just kind of worn away, and you could tell from walking it that the trail would never be the same after they hiked him out because there had been so many little slips and falls. So this is audio, but there's no audio to it. But this is basically the service. These are some of the men that were there. There was one Anglo, and the rest were all the local people who had helped to carry him out. They used coconut shells with a leaf, and it was so pretty. Just very simple, but it was very beautiful. So I was going to move into some of the home visits that I did. I think I only did one or two. Carrie would finish her work, usually about 3 or 4 o'clock. She said, do you want to go on a home visit? So I go off hiking up this hill or hiking off that way, and she was very patient with me. So this is some of the hike. You look up to Carrie, you look down behind you, and it goes down, just really, really steep. So that tells you, how difficult it is. Did you take out the little girl? We didn't see her. The bird picture. Okay. So this is, at one site, we were hiking around the ridge. This is actually where the halfway point is, and then we were hiked around the ridge because we came up this way, and you could look out across to see the little homes through the banana plantations. The kids run out to meet you. They're always excited to see you. This is one of the homes we visited. This is the home of one of the patients that I took care of. I told a few about a little girl who fell into a frying pan. It's a wok. And she landed on her bottom. She was about 1.5 years old. So the entire bottom was raw, second-degree burns, and down her leg it was oil-filled. And this is where she was living. She's here now recuperating. She had gotten home, and these are some of her cousins that are there at the home with her, and her mom's off on the far left. This is her grandfather, and that's his home. It's a slat, a set of slats. It's woven foliage on the sides, and all his belongings are there. Here she was playing with a toy blowgun, where she would take a little leaf or plant and blow it through the tube, and it was really precious to see her working on that. Some more of her cousins. This is their playground follow-up lines. Oh, this is what they look out to from their front view. So that's what they're looking at. The Tonlid right down here, where he fell, is upstream, but that's the same river. And then there's George Point, Brooks Point. This is their playground. It's probably an area about this big, but it's the only flat place on their territory. It's probably about 5 by 12 feet, maybe not even that. And then this is looking down to their homes, which live off. And as we were there, the grandmother came walking up from a stream, probably 20 or 15 minutes below, and that's where their water supply is, carrying the water in the dirty little bottles that they use. Something got big skipped, because I didn't see. Anyways, we're at the hike out, so let's go to the hike. This is what we said goodbye to. In honesty, there was not a very busy clinic the first 2 weeks, which I was grateful for because I got to speak to Carrie a lot. The day we left, this was what the clinic looked like. Because Sundays are busy. Sundays are their market day, and so there's usually lots and lots of people who come on Sundays. And so there was a full profile of people there watching and helping and doing things. And this is going back through the mountains. Hiking down, this is the big tree again as we're heading backwards. And we're going to hit this is looking out to Brooks Point. I can't even say George. This is a group of young men that came behind us. Turns out they're actually linked to the mission. And Lawrence was making a phone call from that point, telling the people that we're going to be at base, we're going to trailhead at such and such a time. Please come and join us so you can be there and meet us and pick us up. So he's making his phone call. And then it was back down through the river. This is one of the river trail pictures. Ruth enjoyed that. She was nimble as anything, just loved it. Looking out at the big tree, out over there, we'll be hiking down past the rice again, past the water buffalo. What do they call them? Caribou, sorry, not water buffalo. Through the banana plantations, through the villages. These are some of the Midland villages. And then on down to the lowlands. This is where we met Naphtali, and he was starting to carry rice up because the harvest had been had, and he had gone down and he was bringing up 30, 40 pounds of rice, personally for his use, but that's how they carry it. We met the car, our chauffeur, one of the teammates, and we're going to just recap here with a picture that gives you the series of where we went, because some of you may not have seen the first one. So we went to the Palawan Island to work with a native group. We started at Berrien Springs, Michigan, where we live, right there. And then we highlighted where you guys are, where we are right now, our second home down in Niles, Southwestern Medical Clinic. It was a 30 some hour flight, because Ruth and I were by ourselves, and you fly from here, South Bend, to Detroit, and then from Detroit you fly over to Japan. And after waiting a little while in Japan, in the middle of the day, you're welcome, you fly on to the Philippines. In a moment, this is Japan, but we'll fly down. And we landed in Manila, very busy environment. And we were taken to what we call a transit house, which is kind of like a place you can just rent a room. And we slept there the first night and then got up the next morning and early and went to the airport and took off again, because we were over here and we flew into Puerto Princesa Airport and then drove the 5 hours down to Brooks Point, the 70 miles. So it's a number of different series, and that's real common with missions. You have all these different series. I think what's not as common is actually, after you arrive, having to hike in. Because I've been on mission trips, but I've not been in a place where it's inaccessible except by walking for my main base. So this is Brooks Point. It has its own grocery store and a number of little shopping centers which are markets. But this is the trailhead among with some of the farming. And then you go up, what you just saw is coming down, but you go up into the first village, which we saw pictures of. And then you go up again. This incline is not so bad, but the last section is really steep before you get to the big tree. So the whole picture is this first incline, a big tree, a river hike, a walk around the ridge, and then on up to the village. And Lawrence has done it on Google Earth, so you can actually see what it looks like from Google Earth. When you get to the big tree, you take a break. The river section is nice and cool because it's covered. The other section was in the sun, and it was really hot that day, even though we tried to go early. The river section reminds you of bouldering because you're just going from boulder to boulder and then up on the edge and then down again. And Lawrence had the experience of hiking out with a Pawano young man, and he had a beautiful spiritual experience reflecting on that, because this man knew exactly where to put his feet. And if you just followed him and put your feet where he did, even when the water was churning and flooding, there was a rock there, and he knew it. And he knew that trail so well that he could just nimbly make his way out, and Lawrence kept up with him, and that helped him hike out once really well. This is the village that we were in, Cabantian, and it's kind of nested on the side of the hill, and below that, a little lower on the slope, is the house where we actually stayed. This is the river where the young man broke his leg, and then once you're down to that river, you climb up the other side, and you come to Cabantian. Oh, sorry, Consuli. I keep saying it. Consuli is where the neonatal sepsis child came from. The little one they carried him from Consuli down. He was born up there at 34 weeks, we estimate, gestation. So that was our home. Next. So I asked Lawrence for a day or two of transition after we finished working hard. Because it takes you for a whirlwind, not being able to, adjust and then adjusting and then thinking about coming back home. And, we got home on Friday and I went to work on Tuesday. So I said, let's just take 2 days or 2 nights at least where we can just unwind and speak about this experience as a family. So the recommendation we had was to go to Sabang, which is in the north part of the island. It's very beautiful. There's all sorts of homes and places to stay. We stayed in more of an upper end place than I think we've ever stayed in before, but it was what we found. It was just like, Mommy, they came and they're serving us. She was really surprised by all this. But it was her 16th birthday, so we also said this was her gift. So it's a fishing area. Now they do lots of tourism. They have a zip line that's 800 meters over the ocean. They also have a large underground, if you go back, honey, there's an underground waterway that runs under this mountain all the way to this point, where you can actually go by boat. They did. I didn't. We went under the river, in the river. It's one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. And then, of course, lots of flowers and things. So it was very beautiful. It was a good opportunity to just reflect and to be grateful. Because while we were up there weren't always peaceful moments. We had a number of rumors of Islamic radicals landing on the other side of the island who were heavily armed. And they have had people come through of different backgrounds with arms. And so we weren't really sure how much we could put credit. We had another report of a person coming into a village saying he was going to kidnap someone for ransom. And then there was two Wycliffe Bible translators who were in our village with us doing some more translation. And they were taken, when they went down for the Bible dedication, they left with the people. And the lady said, if you know what I know, you'll pack your bags tonight and you'll get out of there. So we're sitting up on the top of the mountain listening to these words of wisdom and not knowing where to go. So we were praying, we were meeting as a group, talking with the original missionaries, trying to make decisions. So to be down on a flat level area where you could walk on the beach and just quiet your mind and calm your senses was a blessing. So the trip home was much less eventful. We got our first ride in a tricycle because we got dropped off at the hospital there, had a meal, and then had to transport ourselves to the airport. So that's us in the tricycle. Ruth also fit in there. And when we got to the airport, it started to rain, and what do? They whip out umbrellas. So everyone gets umbrellas. It was so cute. We were there for a couple hours watching what was going on before our plane actually came. So back into the plane, back to the U.S. But I think what really stuck with me was the people. And that's what I wanted to end with, and I'll go over this one more time for those who want to see the beginning. But the people were what really spoke to my heart. You want to take the next picture? This was one of the families. It's actually the family of the gentleman who created this cover for me. And just very simple but very creative. This man had put together a system to actually make a bevel and a billow. And what he did, in one day was just awesome. Just a creative man. This is a granny taking care of her grandson, living in very simple conditions, but very humble people that were willing to share and connect with us in many ways.
One of the things that was fascinating to us was you can see the bamboo slats. And the way that they do potty training there is the kids just lift up their shirt and
let
go
go
to the bathroom right through the bamboo. And then,
you'd be in church and all of a sudden,
they'll take their tajong and just kind of mop it up and life goes on. So that was a bit of adjustment.
and the puppies take care of the other half.
Yeah.
The dogs take care of the other half.
Lois kept reminding us that urine is sterile, so we were grateful to know that, at least initially, I think.
And here I didn't put the picture, and there's another picture. Here's Naphtali. I'll skip on to him. He was such a strong helper. And only after he hiked out, we were told he has one kidney, and that wasn't something he should do. He couldn't put stress on that other kidney that he has left. But he was just
the main one that helped to...
He was the caribou. He was the one who went down on his hands and knees and actually took the first 3 hours with carrying him on his back. And then he was one of the main ones that took him all the way out and over the mountain. Just an amazing man. This is the missionary from up on the other side, Kansuli. I always get those mixed up. Kansuli. His wife and his two daughters who are now in high school, and they come down every day. Oh no, they come down every week, and live in the home next to ours, and then they hike back by themselves to Kansuli.
And that's how they do high school.
Tremendous sacrifice. These are Filipino nationals who are just dedicated, beautiful Christian people who are living out in the mountains. They live in a kind of a, we call it shack. It's kind of an open, covered house, and it's just at the end of nowhere. From the village, we stayed into the village, they stayed, it takes a helicopter 3 minutes, takes you an hour to hike it. So they're really isolated. He's the husband, Sunday, is the one who does who teaches school, and he's got 50 students, one teacher with 50 students.
0 to 3rd.
Yeah, 0 to 3rd grade. So
and then they come across.
Yeah, dedication.
And then they come across.
Yeah, dedication.
Yeah. And this is Bubit again. We can't say enough. When my daughter was saying goodbye, she started crying. We had this experience. We're driving home. We'd gotten on that 5-hour trip back up, on all those funny roads. And all of a sudden, Ruth cries out and says, "Daddy, I left something behind." And Lois is like, "Uh-oh." He says, "There's no way we can go back. We're on a time crunch." And it turns out, "What did you leave behind?" She goes, "I left my heart." And she started crying. And she says, I loved it there so much. She says, "I like it better here than home." She just experienced a different type of life. They don't have any adolescents there. They have children, younger children who immediately start helping, carrying all the water and doing a lot of chores. And then by the time you're 14, 15, you're married and you have your own children. So you basically move right through that transition and into life, and don't live for very long, maybe 50s, 60s, maybe 70 occasionally. But she just loved it there. She had a lot of freedom and did a lot of responsible things. We're grateful. Some of the girls, they would follow me every time I came back from the clinic. And they were grade schools, and so they had afternoons off. And so we would finger play and talk to each other as best we can, because I'm not a language person. I don't learn languages quickly. And then this is Carrie. I just had to say a few more things. This young lady is just an awesome person. I could go over and over many things that she has experienced. And as we arrived, she took us aside and she says, I wanted to be a missionary when I was a child. This is what I wanted to find. And she says, I'm no longer a short-term missionary. I want to transition to become a full-time missionary. So she's actually wanted to commit her life to mission service full-time as a single adult, young adult, to work in these mountains. So keep going on. You can take a few more pictures. This is one of their water systems where they've caught the water and were trickling it to the home of the man who actually built this for me. And that was their outdoor plumbing that went to a point where they could actually get the water close to their house down the bamboo. But we went on one visit together, she and I, and she was almost crying afterwards because we went way, way out. You can see over this hill and down on the other side, I think I have another picture, was this little hut. And in this hut next to this tree, there was a woman who had had multiple pregnancies with complications. And Carrie was trying to get to her, and she knew she was pregnant again and was trying to meet her and greet her and try to find a way to bridge the gap so she could help her in this new pregnancy. And the lady looked up at us, and she started shrieking and crying out to Carrie, and she took off over the edge on the other side. She just hit herself off on the other side. And we still don't understand why, if there was fear, if there was something mentally unbalanced that she was dealing with. But Carrie came back, the next picture up the hill, and, she was just, that was before she went down, actually. She was just, you could see the emotions, and she started questioning, is it something I'm doing? Is it something I'm not doing well, Am I too brisk with my connection? Should I be more personal with these people? Because she's got so many things to do, But she's just such a sweet person. Very soft-spoken, which becomes a problem, but she has beautiful hands. And I kind of thought of her as a little bit like, what is it? The Sound of Music. With those big, you see all these mountains behind her and looking there, but just very committed soul, very committed. Her dream, I asked her, Carrie, what would you do if you could do something up here? What would your dream be? And I thought she'd say, I get Indianizations, I get water things. You know what she said? I would put together a string quartet. I would give these children music in a new way. She would love to have used violins. She has 2 students that she teaches. She played with Ruth multiple times. My daughter plays and had to practice up there. And she would love to have violins that she could actually give to these children and play with them and teach them. That was her heart's desire. And then she went on to water supply and other things later on. Okay? Oh, so these are just the other things. So we just totally skipped the pictures. Oh, well, I guess we didn't need to see that. This is Ruth, one of her favorite students that she really, really misses, on the porch right before we were getting ready to leave. This is some pictures of the rain. These are just extra things. This is Ruth going to pick up the tukau. She went through the stream with Carrie, and so she's carrying this. They went and picked it up because it was pouring rain. And I think there's a few movies just to give you an appreciation of what rain looks like in the tropics. It's noisy. The noise is also interesting in this, but I don't know if it's going to go. But it just looks like sheets of rain, and there are times where you couldn't see, very far down. That's Carrie. She's picking up. Are you skipping them wrong, honey? No, I'm just trying to see if I can. Okay. And so all the paths become rivers. They just gush. And then all the streams become rivers, big rivers. And they just walk through it all the time. I mean, it's just part of, you get all wet, you get all dry. You just take time and you dry off. But it's just an indoor-outdoor life in there. But you can imagine that is very slippery on steep hills to walk through. And that's why I was drenched with mud when we went up. The temperature of the water is probably cold. We were in the 70s probably when it comes to the environment. Night times it dropped down probably to the 60s, but this is just rainwater, and it usually clouds up in the afternoon and then rains, so the morning might be very nice. That was important on our flight back when Lawrence actually got a flight to take Elias back. That they had to beat the rain because there was a small plane that actually took them the 5 hours. They did it in like 60 minutes, 50 minutes, 40 minutes. And there was one other one. She's kneeling down. It's not in the picture. Ruth took the picture of this one, talking to one of the family members there, and joining her, and then walking up the path. And this just gives you a little bit more of a feel. She's soaked to the skin, covered with rainwater, and they get quite muddy on the way. And she just keeps on going. She's just an amazing gal. We talked to her just yesterday we called. We were able to talk to her. And the good news I had was that the little girl who fell into the frying pan and had been lost to care when I left, she burned second-degree all around her bottom and all the way down her leg. And we had to take all the skin off and treat it daily. For a while we gave her an IV and a cath, and this is the mud. You're just walking down an incline to the stream, which is, she came back and she's doing well, which I was grateful because I wanted to see where the loop would close on that. The family just chose to go to the lowlands, and so they didn't come back for follow-up. We were changing bandages every day for her.
If anyone's feeling seasick, there's a couple of
Yeah, it's my daughter trying to capture the joy of hiking in the middle of a rainstorm through the tropics. Any questions that you have? I have some things up here. These are woven items that were woven by